Hey everybody, welcome. Good evening. It's Wednesday. It's around 7 p.m. Central. Welcome to the Hang Up. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Let me tell you, it's been a busy few days after having been a little ill over the Thanksgiving holiday. I got a lot of work done around here. I just finished the debate review for my discussion with Destiny on the bodily autonomy argument in favor of abortion rights. And that's been posted to patrons and will be available to everybody else tomorrow. But I definitely think I hope people go watch the discussion. I know it's got, like 70,000 views already, but it's genuinely, I think, a good example of how to have a discussion about a disagreement on a nuanced point, perhaps. But I had fun with it, and I look forward to doing more of those. I've also been doing a lot of work on the snake stuff. I can't wait for the first of the year when I can just launch the snake channel, get you guys the information. I finished setting up a rack. I've been doing medical stuff on some snakes that were a little ill. And I didn't realize how much time was just passing. I mean, there's lots of work to do between, I do this show on Wednesdays. I do the Sunday show on Sundays. I'm trying to help out. We're building up the line now. You guys are awesome. The line is growing leaps and bounds, and the new shows have just been awesome. I didn't get to watch last night's, but I'm going to watch last night's tomorrow. And if you haven't seen it, I've heard nothing but good things, so go back and watch last night's as well. But it made it so that I was kind of falling behind on news. For example, I remember interrupting my day to sit there and watch some news articles about how former President Donald Trump had dinner with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes. Now, for those who don't know, those are two racists. And I don't understand what kind of world we live in where the former president of the United States can just wind up having racists over for dinner, like vocal out racists. And, he went on his Truth Social Twitter copy to repeatedly talk about how he didn't know Nick Fuentes. I don't know Nick Fuentes. I didn't know this before. I didn't know this. I didn't know, Kanye showed up. I didn't know he was bringing a guest. It was this person. I didn't know who it was. It's absolutely ridiculous. How the hell do you not have a single PR person whose job it is to say, somebody would like to come and have dinner with you. Here's why I think it might be a bad idea. How hard is that? So yes, the chat already corrected me. 3 racists. Yeah, okay. But I can't imagine being a rich, famous, former president of the United States and not having a single person around you that could say, I really don't think it'd be a good idea for ye or Nick Fuentes to come to dinner. But, it's the world we live in where they want to just share as much hateful, garbage and spew as much of it as they can. As a matter of fact, I found myself in disagreement with Elizabeth Warren today, very briefly. Not on her ideological stance. She was basically saying that she has a problem with the fact that Elon Musk or any one person could have so much power that they would be able to decide who does get to speak and who doesn't get to speak. And while I understand her ideological point and would agree with it, that, hey, no one person should be shutting down other people, making the decision about who gets to speak anywhere. That's not what's happening. Twitter's a private forum. Musk can shut it down tomorrow if he wants to. Maybe he should. I'm starting to think maybe he should. But he can shut it down if he wants to. And he can sit there and do this draconian shit of deciding who gets to speak and who doesn't. And he can invite all the racists back and everything else. He gets to do that. If you spend $44 billion to buy something like that, you get to do that. And on that note, Elizabeth Warren is a little bit wrong. Not wrong ideologically, that there's a problem here. But there's still wrong about whether free speech and the public square applies to online spaces like Twitter. The only functional difference between Twitter and a forum that I could go set up is population. That's That's the functional difference. There's no right to Twitter. There's no right to have a platform. There's no right to have an audience. And, Musk can burn it all down. The nice thing is that somebody else can make a new something. Trump went and made his own Truth Social, or somebody made it for him, and I haven't messed with it. There's other options. So it's not just Twitter is the public forum now, and we must let everyone. No, you don't. No, you don't. What you need are policies that are fair to everyone, fair with regard to opportunity. And if you violate policies, you should lose your Twitter account. You should lose access to it. That's just the way it goes. So it was a very subtle little disagreement. And despite that, the only hateful comment that I got started off by telling me it's the public forum, Jew. Like that was the first thing out of their mouth, is this person with a Bible verse as their Twitter handle description decides that they're just going to call me a Jew and then ask me if I'd hold the same view if a cake baker refused to bake a cake for whatever. It's bizarre to me that that's just the hatred that's just spewed quickly. And I've been a part of the atheist community for many, many years now, and both active in like Meet Space, where we've had community get-togethers with local organizations and national organizations and conventions all around the world. As a matter of fact, not only is the Line Network adding new shows, but there will be gatherings and meet and greets and dinners and opportunities to hang out with people coming up in the coming months, and there will be real community, because I think for the most part, if you're the type of person who does not want or need community, that's fine. I appreciate that you're even watching this. There are people who don't, but there are others who feel a real strong need for community. And in my case, when I found my way out of religion, the first step was sorting it through for myself. And then it was, let me see if I can come up with a way to explain this to the people I care about, because they're going to be worried and wonder, hey, I went to church with you. I knew you when you were in the Navy. We talked about this. We talked about that. How can you, give up your religious views and start speaking vocally in opposition to Christianity, for example? That was where I started. And from there it became, okay, not only should I have something that I can maybe explain to my mom and my grandmother or people around me who knew me back when, but I also want to work with new atheists and old atheists. I have things to learn. I have things to teach. And we have to have the sort of community, the community building, both online and in Meet Space, that allow us to give people a chance to have the sort of conversations that they can't have with the people in their family, or that they may not be comfortable having with the people in their family. And so one of the things I've tried to do over the years is kind of boost voices that may not have had as big of an audience as I've been lucky to have over the years, adding people to various shows, and then also doing what I can to promote other shows and channels. I know I'm not active on Discord pretty much anywhere. That will change a little bit. I mean, we'll have hangouts and discussions on Discord, but I don't keep up with everything that's going on with every YouTuber. But there's some people who I just keep seeing over and over, and then we'll get to work together on something, and then looking for the next time we get to hang out. Is there going to be a convention in the area and whatever else? And one of those people is Neil the 604 Atheist, who I've invited here today to introduce himself to anybody who does not already know him. You'll see him in chat as one of our wrenched mods and everything else. But Neil, every time I turn around, you're there, man. There are people who I've known for years who I've had on shows more often, and I don't ever see them. And I see, like, boom, and you're active and you're commenting. You seem to have a drive that I find inspiring for online atheist community. So please do better than I could and introduce yourself and give a little bit about your background and tell everybody what you're about. You have to unmute in order to do that.
Right. You see, and here I was saying, oh yeah, don't worry, I won't forget to unmute. Apparently I did. But yeah, my name, as Matt said there, is Neil the 604 Atheist. What I do is I have a channel where I talk to people about how they found their way free from whatever belief systems they were once a part of. And I think I'm climbing up on 450 interviews now. So that's quite a few people. Nice. And, and every story is... There's a ton of similarities, obviously, but there is some really unique and sometimes some pretty gut-wrenching stuff that I hear from these folks, especially, being abandoned by family and friends and stuff like that. I think is the ones that hurt the most, I think, especially for them. But and I do something after the interview. I do a little after party, and that's where the guest for the night gets to meet a lot of the other folks in the community. And I've got a lot of regulars that pop on my show, like student Dr. Ben and Jonathan and Stephanie Helms and stuff like that. They're usually pretty in almost every episode anyways. So it's, I think it's important because I think these stories need to be told, because I know for a fact, because I've actually spoken to people in my personal life, just on the street kind of thing. And there's a lot of people that have doubts, and there's a lot of people that are afraid to get away from what they're a part of because of those kinds of fears. And to let these folks know that there is a community out there that's got their back and is very welcoming, and they'll, say, come on and hang out with us for a couple hours and just see what the rest of us are like. And you're going to find some pretty unique, some pretty funny people. And we're a lot of fun most of the time, but we do tackle some serious topics as well, like you mentioned just before going live tonight, or before having me on here tonight. And I think my inspiration came for years before I started doing this. Probably about 3-4 years before I started doing this, I was listening to shows like the Atheist Experience that you were hosting at the time, and I was listening to Seth Andrews and Aron Ra, and all the usual outlets on YouTube for this sort of topic. And I think it was one of the Seth Andrews episodes that I heard, or a couple, where he was talking to people about that very topic, about finding their way free or their deconversion or deconstruction stories. And I thought, that's something that's always fascinated me. And I'm a pretty chitty chatty kind of guy, so I could probably do something like that. So back in 2018, I started up, and thankfully I had some folks that were somewhat established in the community, like Surus, and they helped me get sort of a little bit of an outreach. And within the first couple of months, I was already up to a few hundred subscribers, which blew me away. And now I'm past 3,000. So the interest is there, if you ask me. So folks are coming to listen to the show, and I get emails all the time from people that were, I guess, lurking in the background of some of the shows or watching them off live hours. And they're saying, wow, your show is amazing. It really helped me. I really identified with the guest you had on last Tuesday or whatever. And so I decided I'll do it 3 nights a week, so the more and more of these stories can get out there. And actually, the last fellow I had on is an ex-Mormon, so Jimmy might know a little bit about that. So, so I'm Shane wondering, Larson's his name. I found him on TikTok. Yeah, go ahead.
After doing hundreds of sort of deconversion discussions to talk about people getting out, what are some of the most common things that you think, that you were surprised by or that we're missing? Because, I've done call-in shows, and I'll argue with apologists left and right. And that has a place and it has use, but it's not the same as what recovering from religion is doing, where there's more counseling and other stuff. And so I would love to get, when I was working on this with other organizations, but I'm still trying to find a way to where we're building to address the whole person, not just let me satisfy your need to think that religion is garbage and raw. Let me rail against my family who mistreated me. What things surprised you and that we're finding out that we missed and we can do better at helping people with?
That's a good question. I think the one thing that surprises me is how often I hear, I didn't know there were others out there like me. But how do we make that? How do we change that? That's a tough one to change, because unless they know what to go and look for, they're not going to find it. So unless more and more percentage of the population becomes a non-believer, then it's not going to be something they're easily going to stumble upon. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that surprised me is hearing people say, because being involved in the community now for at least about the last 4 years or so, it surprises me that people don't realize that there's so many unbelievers out there. So I think that was the biggest shock is just hearing people say, I didn't know there were others out there like me.
I think, when it comes to like the search algorithms that we have on social media, where you're fed things that are already like-minded, and I don't completely object to that, because I'd like to have as little racist shit in my daily feed as possible. So if what I get fed is or what is being fed to me are people who aren't awful, cool, I'm in favor of that. But if you aren't active in a particular community at all, you don't tend to start getting the suggestions that even show you how big that community is. For example, I'm going to keep going on and on about the snake stuff and everything else, but the herp community, the reptile community, is huge. And I mean, you're talking channels with millions of subscribers and conventions. I've been to more reptile conventions in the past 3 months than I have been to atheist conventions in the past, than in any given year, I think, or really close to that, when excluding COVID. And so if we can't figure out how to spark, like if you just get them to do a couple of searches or watch a couple of shows, all of a sudden the floodgates are going to open. They're going to realize, oh, there's this community. But getting that past that tipping point of the initial introduction, if you're somebody who has lived your life and never interacted with the skeptic, secular, free thought, atheist community, we're just not going to show up in your recommends.
I know. It's funny because I think even if you dabble in something that's similar to what we do, some of those videos do start showing up in the algorithm. So I think the algorithm works in general, but you have to tap into something that's at least quasi-related to atheism in order for those to start showing up in your algorithm. And I think how do you change that, though? You can't just randomize the algorithm, because then it's going to show you all kinds of stuff that you really don't want to see, like those racist pieces of shit that you were just talking about. So
yeah,
it's tough to do. But I'll keep interviewing people and try and get that algorithm to change. That's all you can do.
So at this point, after doing hundreds of interviews, you've got people from many different backgrounds, ex-Mormons and Protestants and Catholics and everything else. Is there, not that you're going to necessarily have the silver bullet, is there a unifying, like, what's the most common thing, irrespective of what religion somebody's coming out from, that you hear during the interviews?
That's like a trigger factor?
Either for staying in or
the camel's back, or
either way, it could be what kept them blinded, what was the straw, whatever the commonality is that it's we can argue about what's different between Protestant, Catholic, and Mormon and all this other stuff.
Sure.
But there's some commonality both in the what got you in, kept you in, and what got you out. And I just wanted to know, if you started to see trends.
I did, and I think the biggest one that stands out is a lot of folks that may have been in religious type schools, and then they end up going to colleges that aren't religious. When they hit those college years, a lot of people start questioning, because they're meeting all kinds of people that they've never met before, and they're taking courses that they didn't even have an inclination to take before. Like first year students and stuff like that have to take something where now all of a sudden they're introduced to the reality behind evolution. They go, and those wires start crossing in their heads, and they're like, wait a minute, This isn't what I was taught when I was homeschooled or over at Catholic school or whatever. So I think one of the biggest crossover events is that college level education that starts these folks thinking and getting out of that indoctrinated mindset. So it's I hear that probably the most out of all of the ones that I've done.
And I don't know if there's much of a real solution for that, because I mean, don't get me wrong, the internet access to information, I think, has been the biggest boom to secularization of the world, but also you have kind of decision paralysis because there's so many options and so many things to discover and so many things to find that, you know, it can just be overwhelming. For me, it wasn't so much, I didn't go to college, I went off to the Navy, but it's kind of the same thing. For most people, they are primarily surrounded by their family up until the point where they get out of secondary schools, college, and whether they go in, or I'm sorry, high school type things, whether they go into a university or a military situation, both of those do the same thing, which is you are now going to be spending most of your time with people who aren't your family. And that means you're going to be exposed to people who don't talk in the shorthand and don't think with the same assumptions that you and your family do. And the first time you really come up against somebody who's truly different, I think people learn a lot about themselves. Am I the I would have never expected, am I the type of person who's going to be fearful of others, or am I going to be excited and embrace it because, you know, everything up till now has been kind of, it's boring, it's the same. Here's what we do. We do this at Christmas. We do this at Thanksgiving. We do this. And on Sundays, we'll put on our nice clothes and we'll go hang out with people and everything else. And all of a sudden there's somebody who's like, oh, did you watch this show? Did you, do you like this band? Have you done this thing? And those little conversations get to build connections with people that aren't your family or you're part of my church. Because if you build those connections first and you get to like the person, then when you find out, oh, I'm a Southern Baptist kid and my friend here, oh my gosh, you're Jewish, you're a Scientologist, you're a Mormon, whatever.
Yeah. You're right, though. I think for a lot of times I hear from the people that excitement factor is there, but it's also coupled with the fear thing, because it's the unknown to them, because they've been stuck in whatever pattern of family life they've been in for so long, and then they get out and they meet all these other people who have all these different attitudes, different belief systems, even not believing, and then all of a sudden it's kind of exciting, exhilarating, but it is also really scary for them as well. But that's the kind of thing I think that starts to trigger, well, all these other people that I'm meeting now, and they don't believe what I believe. How do I know if what I believe is real, is true? My new best friend happens to be a Hindu, and he's got like a bazillion gods. So, wait a minute, what's going on here? So, and that sort of thing is one of quite a common trigger for getting those questions to go through people's heads.
I met some people who grew up. I'm very cautious with the cult label. On the one hand, I agree with the kind of common adage that cult is what the big church calls the little church. And I think that's a good way to look at the fact that they're all doing the same thing, just not necessarily to the same extent. But I'm cautious with it because I know there are some incredibly harmful religious organizations where the mechanisms that they use are to separate you from anybody who could possibly trigger those sorts of thoughts of, is this, let's keep you as insulated and fed the same diet of information as possible. And so we'll see that in various cults. But I think that it's becoming clear, hopefully to more people, that the average church still does that, just not in an intentional nefarious sense. For example, I went I graduated high school with 900 and some odd kids. We had the largest graduating class in the history of that school. And the next year they split the school into two schools. And despite that, and despite being, I was just another kid at school. Yes, I played soccer and was on student council, but I wasn't in the jocks and I wasn't in the geeks, and I was just kind of, nondescript me. But my friends and the people that I hung out with most were all from my church. And that wasn't because my parents or my church said, you should only hang out with these kids. They didn't say that explicitly. Yeah. They didn't say that explicitly, but it was still kind of clear. And also, we were active in the church. So, of course, my best friends were going to be in the church. And I sort of indoctrinated myself to some extent. I had very few good friends in high school who weren't part of my church. And if we take a look at what people are doing, it's really easy to go. I remember a comparative religions course where I sat there and I was like, man, all these other religions are really weird. I'm glad I got the one true right religion.
Right one.
And it just it didn't even register. That's how blind we are to the world around us, because there's so much information and yet we're very selective about it. I wonder, in the course of talking with people, I remember when Greta Christina wrote her book on coming out and the reasons for it, she interviewed about 400 and some odd.
Good book.
Yes, it is. She interviewed like 400 or some odd atheists who came out, and of all of them, only one of them regretted it. In your course of interviewing people with their stories, how many expressed regrets? Do you have a higher percentage than that?
I wouldn't say I have a higher percentage, but it's quite common. I wouldn't say they've regretted coming out as an atheist, because I've often heard you say, and I completely agree, once you're unconvinced of something, it's really hard to be reconvinced of something that you are now. I often equated it to the Wizard of Oz analogy, where once you see behind the curtain, it's kind of hard to believe in the wizard again, right? So, right. But their regrets usually are around the whole community aspect. They regret some people get not disowned, but just kicked out basically of the family unit, and they miss their family, and they miss talking to their siblings or their friends that they went to Bible school with, or even myself. I was raised as a Jew, by the way, born to Christians, but raised as a Jew because I was given up for adoption. And I went through Hebrew school, and I made lots and lots of friends at Hebrew school. So, they consumed a lot of my childhood friendships, and a few of them, not all of them, because, honestly, I think today a good chunk of the Jewish community is fairly secular anyways. I know my parents were really. I think my mom was.
I've heard statistics that more than 50% of Jews in Israel are secular.
I lived there for 2 years, and I can confirm that for you. I think I only had 2 friends that I made there that considered themselves to be not even like religious, just somewhat religious. I still call myself to some degree a secular Jew, because I still do the holidays with the family, like Passover, Hanukkah, which is coming up, that kind of thing. But yeah, I went, going through Hebrew school and whatnot, all those friends that I made there. I was always the kid that got stuck out in the hallway because I was asking questions that the teacher couldn't answer. It's like, because even as a kid,
I was not
hearing the Noah's Ark story. Oh no, you were the good kid. You were the little golden child, right?
I did not. My curiosity had, for whatever reason, my curiosity and my skepticism and my questioning almost never had anything to do with religion. It was always other stuff. The religion was just so ingrained in me that it was a matter of fact. You just don't question this. Why? It wouldn't even thought to question it.
Right. Yeah, but I would ask questions because I couldn't believe that there were giants back then. I couldn't believe that the earth was flooded for like a year. Like, I couldn't believe that. So, because I'd heard other flood stories, even at that age, because I had friends that were involved in other belief systems too. So I think because I was born in the 60s, my childhood in the 70s, teenage years in the 80s. By the end of the 80s, I was getting drunk in the bars. So I think that time period for me, I'm one of those Gen Xer types. So I think that time for me, a lot of my friends, religion wasn't really spoken about unless it was a topic of discussion. So, my friend down the street, my best friend when I grew up was a Christian kid, and I used to get to go stay over there for Christmas, and I'd even get a present from Santa under the tree, right? So
Nice.
We kind of shared that sort of stuff, right? And he'd come over and do Hanukkah with us because my dad made like the best potato latkes on the block, for crying out loud. So he'd come over and have some of those. So it was all shared sort of stuff. But even, it's just, did we really believe in a God? I almost want to say, I'm pretty sure that most of us on my block anyways really didn't. We just went through the motions because that's just what you did.
So we're going to get to calls here in just a second. And by the way, we'll be reading all the super chats, $10 and over at the end of the show, like always. But if any of them come in that are tied to this, I'd love to get to them early.
Sure.
So since you were primarily a secular Jew of an occasionally observant secular Jew, what on earth tripped you into being active in the atheist community? Because some of my friends who both either were, whether they were Jewish or not, who were largely secular, like one of my best friends, my former roommate, who is partially responsible for me being as active as I am, he would have never, ever gotten active or known about the atheist community, despite being an atheist almost his entire life, if it weren't for me falling into it. So it's like, do we need the former fundies to be out there going, hey, damn it, pay attention to the atheists, in order for some of the lifelong and long-term secularists to get involved? How did you stumble into this?
I fell down that YouTube rabbit hole. Like I said, I found all you guys, and I started watching these shows, for lack of a better term, religiously. And I'd work in the lab at work, right? Because I'm a chemist lab technician. I don't have a degree in chemistry, but I know quite a bit. But and I'd listen to them while I was doing all my testing and stuff like that, and recycling the antifreeze and whatnot. And I'd listen to the shows, and I'd go, fuck, this is great. I didn't realize there was this big movement, but I get it because of what I'm seeing in the political sphere these days, how fundamentalist type thinkers are getting power, and it's starting to piss me off. It's not so much here in Canada, but for you guys down there, I mean, we have our share, don't get me wrong, but for you guys down there, it just seemed to be going on a downward spiral. So I thought, you know what, I got to contribute to this. I got to do something. I got to become a part of this. And eventually I'm going to start getting to these conventions and meeting the people that I admired for what they were doing, and hanging out with them, becoming friends, and just making more of an impact. And that's what I decided to do. So I started doing that. I just found a niche that I seem to be able to handle.
I'm very glad you have. I was honored to be included in the conversation. And, while I don't spend a lot of time listening to a bunch of podcasts, I've heard and enjoyed several of the kind of deconstructions that you've done. Let's take some calls here, because there's people with some questions, and I can get our thoughts on it and everything else. Ezra, pronouns he, him in Michigan. Welcome. How are you? I don't hear anything, but I'm going to try this again. Ezra, you're live on the line.
Come in, Ezra.
Hello. Yes.
Welcome. How are you?
Hello.
How you doing, Ezra?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you. So I had you guys on mute. I was watching the live stream. I just kind of put the voice on mute.
Yeah, it's a habit. I should give at least 22 seconds of warning that we're going to calls, since some of you are on a 22-second delay. But welcome to the show. What can we do?
Well, yeah. I'm on. Yeah.
Yeah, you're on.
Well, right on. I had a question. I just wanted to say I can't believe Matt Dillahunty. I was just listening to Neil. I can't hear you guys.
We're not talking right now. And if you're listening to the show,
there we are. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just talk.
Mute the YouTube.
Yeah, and God, you said that to thousands of people. Sorry about that. I had my phone muted because I was just like watching you guys, and I muted both speakers.
Got it.
So my bad. Yeah. So fast forward. I just want to say I've been watching you guys for a while, and you're Neil. You seem really cool as well. And what you were just saying about the origins of how you got into it. I was after I graduated college, I moved to.
Hello.
Okay, sorry. Yeah,
Did we lose him?
yeah. So Matt, okay, my direct question. I just wanted to. It's awesome. I just wanted to, Matt. There's something you said back when you were on the Atheist experience a while back, and I just wanted you to just kind of tell me what that's about. And you had said, how could you tell that God was the good guy and the devil was the bad guy? And that really, I've never heard somebody put it like that. And I just want to be able to like use that in a form, but I don't really have a rebuttal to like, if you could understand like how the theist would be like, well, what do you mean? And so I just want to understand, like, how would I, rebuke that, like, and say, and have a good way of describing, like, why would you say that? I guess is.
Ooh, jeez, he might have just got abducted by aliens there.
I think so. So
that's an easy one, really.
I'm not completely sure I know what you're looking for, but I'll try, Ezra, and then we'll see if Neil has thoughts to maybe clear this up even more. When I ask people, how do you determine that God is the good one and Satan is the evil one? It's because, by and large, I, as a young Christian kid, just went with it. That's what I was told was the case. God is good. Yeah. God is good all the time. God is good. God is the foundation of good. God is God is a good one. Satan is evil. Satan is the enemy. Satan is the one. And I'm like, first of all, there's a bunch of questions to ask, which is, how do you know either one of them's real? But just setting that aside, looking at the stories, how do you know that God is the good one and Satan is the evil one? What criteria are you using to evaluate that? Because if I say Neil's the good one and I'm the evil one, we can say that all day long, and maybe it's true. But what is the criteria that we use to determine that Neil's the good one? In the case of Christianity, the criteria that you tend to use is God wrote. Okay, I don't know what that sound is, but I'll mute you. God wrote his moral code on your heart, supposedly. And the reason that I came up with it was in response to people who would say that. Well, God is good. God is wrote his moral code on my heart. But if I wrote my moral code on your heart, I would be perfect. Because I would be being judged by the very standard. If I say, it's good to own people as property, the way the Bible does. Now I've defined good in such a way that I will be comporting with the standard of good. And so the real reason to ask that question is to get somebody to think about, hang on, what standard do I use to tell good from evil? Because if I begin with, the Bible says X is good, therefore X is good, well, that's nifty, but does that make it true? And what do I do if something in the Bible seems to be bad? And what standard am I using then? When the Bible says you can own people as property, that to me seems bad. And I have a standard. And so most people, I don't think, spend a lot of time thinking about the standard. What were you, by the way, Ezra, you shouldn't be looking to offer a rebuttal or have a prepackaged answer to this, or to what their response is. What you should be doing is asking them this so that you can actually have a conversation with them about how to determine the difference between good and evil. Is it okay to kill people? And if not, why?
I understand that. I understand that. I was just like, when you said that, I had never heard it put that way before. And so, it's not like I was looking for, because usually when I talk to people, I've had these conversations. I mean, just today, this guy, he walked up. I'm kind of like I work at a dispensary, and I was letting him in, and I was introduced myself just to know. I don't work there, so it's just like we don't have a uniform. I work there, but we don't have uniforms, so he didn't know. He's like, just some random guy asked me for my ID, so I'm like, my name's Ezra, and it was very. He just off the bat went to this religious thing. And he's like, oh, do you read the Bible? I'm like, yeah, I've read it once because, I went to school for comparative religion.
I don't know what that sound is.
Hello?
Yeah, we're still here.
So I went to school for that. And so he went off into this, huge thing. And it was just because of my name. Because he thought my name, he's like, oh, and I know it's like a second or third century, prophet. My brother's name is Ezekiel, so people go nuts on that, and I'm just like, no, my parents just liked the name. It has nothing to do with, which is really why there's an episode on the Atheist Experience with you, Matt. This guy thought because your name was Matt, and that's biblical, which it isn't, right, which you pointed out. It was just like he thought you must be religious, and this guy wrote down his number, and he's like, read this book, the legacy of the Gospels, and I'm like, oh my God, and I'm just a very kind person, so I let him have his time. And here I am in my other ear, I have my Bluetooth speaker in, I just got one little speaker in. I'm listening to Matt Dillahunty, with Tracy Harris. I'm like, this guy. It was so funny, it was so funny, but I don't want to take up too much more time. I just wanted to ask that question, and, when you've given me always a lot to think about, and all my friends, I try not to be hard, but I do drop a lot of your kind of sayings, but I've always liked when you said, look it up for yourself, don't believe me, come to your own conclusions, and I've always been that way. And probably the origins of my atheism, just to be clear, is when my mom took away Santa Claus. It was so crazy to me. I'm like, what, so the presents were in the trunk? Because we used to go to Cincinnati to my grandma's house. I'm like, so are you saying the presents have been in the trunk these past 10 years? Like, yeah, we did that. And they told me flat out, we did this to comfort you kind of thing. And I remember thinking to myself, I never want to be fooled like this again. And I wasn't raised any sort of way. I was allowed to remain atheist. I think that's the default position. And so I think I was able to keep that belief. And so when I came across when my parents, I knew, lied to me purposefully, but thinking it was a helping thing, tradition, it really strengthened my epistemology and my methodology for just believing someone because they told me, and that was a very, and then hearing Matt, he just really made it in stone, it was a very concrete understanding, and I've always appreciated. I wanted to come to Austin a couple times, and especially to the, what you call Esther's Folly. I really always wanted to go to that.
You should definitely go to Esther's Folly. It's a great thing. I'm gonna move on now, Ezra. I appreciate it. Hopefully, we helped you with the answer to your question a bit. Thanks for calling in. I want to ask Neil. That's something I didn't really think about or wasn't planning to talk about today. This kind of question of how did you determine God was a good one or evil, and Satan was evil. And there's lots of other questions that are kind of they're in the ballpark of Dan Dennett's intuition pumps and stuff like that. If you were in that position, working in a dispensary, and somebody just came in and assumed that because your name was biblical, they want to ask you about the Bible, do you have certain things that you say to start a conversation or move a conversation in a particular way?
If I'm asked that particular question, if I consider God
or whatever, if somebody brings up religion, in an arena when you're not necessarily expecting it.
Yeah, well, basically, I just bring up the fact that I'm not just an atheist; I'm also an atheist, right? So I believe that the question of the existence of God is really meaningless. It has no coherent and unambiguous definition. So I really don't know how you can talk about that sort of thing, because what is God? Everyone will give you a different answer, everyone you speak to.
Yeah.
So for me, it's too unambiguous of a topic for me. So I said, so let's talk about something else. And by the way, if anyone wants to write something on your heart, that hurts a lot. So I'd probably go to the hospital afterwards.
True. I've gone down that path many times when it's like, my heart pumps blood. My heart doesn't tell me anything at all about that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But your wish is about to be granted, because we have Mark calling in from New York, who is a theist, who's going to give us evidence for God. So welcome, Mark. How are you?
Oh, wow. Cool.
Hey, man. What's going on?
Just talking to people.
How's it going, gentlemen?
How you doing, Mark?
Yeah. Good conversation. So, Matt, I actually listened to one of your debates earlier today, trying to prepare myself a little bit for this call. And I did find it actually enjoyable. And it was one of the debates you did with, I think, a theist. His name was Tyler. And it was very much focused on sort of the evidence for God and kind of the standards that I guess each of you were applying. And I was somewhat, and he actually raised a question which I had thought of, and sometimes I think of when speaking to atheists, which is how do you disprove your atheism? And in that debate, he asked you for an example of something that would disprove your atheism, and I think he used the example of if the stars sort of realigned in the sky, would that be enough to convince you that God existed? And I think you said no. Am I correct about that? It was a little ambiguous to me.
So real quick, and then let me kind of interject for a second, and then I'll let you keep going to get back on point. I think you may be talking about Tyler Vela, who I don't know well, and I don't remember the specifics of the debate or debates. Although recently someone told me that he's no longer a theist. I don't know if that's true. I don't know anything about it. But the question of what would what's that?
I said you turned another one, Matt.
No, I'm not going to take any credit for it. I just found it was interesting that somebody's referencing a Tyler debate when I literally this week somebody mentioned to me, "Hey, did you know that Tyler Vela is no longer a Christian?" And I was like, I had no idea because I don't interact with him. So the question is not so much if somebody had asked me what would disprove your atheism. I would say that first of all, my atheism isn't necessarily a positive position, but if you show that a God exists, I'm no longer an atheist. But the question you're talking about when Tyler or whoever would mention, if there was a message written in the stars, would that be enough to convince you? And my answer is no, because I don't know how to demonstrate that was done by a God versus done by some technology that I don't know anything about. Until I know how to distinguish between those two, I could not reasonably conclude it was a God. So that's what was my answer.
Okay. I mean, yeah, and that makes sense. And the reason I bring it up is I'm by nature, I consider myself to be a skeptical person. I was raised in a family where culturally, religion was my parents are from Italy, and so the culture there is Christian. But sort of beyond that, it wasn't a very religious upbringing. And eventually, as I got older, I started to become agnostic, and then even more so, I think in the atheism category. So I sort of I'm not sure if empathize is the right word, but I try to look at things from all perspectives, and I don't want my belief to be unreasonable or irrational. I want it to be correct. That's really what I'm seeking. I'm seeking the truth.
Sure.
And that's why
I think we all want that.
That's why, exactly, and that's why I really value your program and what you guys are doing, because you seem like you are interested in that goal. And that's sort of the spirit in which I asked the question too, and sort of in terms of how do we know that our beliefs are correct. It seems like we need to have some framework of testing them, or trying to be at least objective, and
But I mean, that's one of the cornerstones of skepticism, or modern scientific skepticism, is what do I believe? Why do I believe it? What's the foundation of this? And if you want to know, you can start comparing beliefs. Like, pick any 3 things that you believe. Like, I believe the sky is blue. I understand that's more complicated than just the sky is blue, but by what I mean for the sky is blue, it is true and justified. I believe that the Earth spins on its axis and that the Earth orbits the sun. Then, if you talk about what those define what those beliefs are with particular clarity and why you believe them, then pick another belief, like, I believe there's a God. Can you do the same thing for a God that you can do for the Earth orbiting the sun? And if not, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not true, and it doesn't mean it's not justified. Then you have to say, okay, is my belief in a God more closely associated or more closely analogous to the belief that the Earth orbits the sun? Or is it closer to, I believe love is just a word, or I believe people are generally good? So you have to do that to figure out what category the God claim is. So what is it? I guess you can keep going, because I know Neil's going to have questions on this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to hear from Neil as well. But no, I agree with what you just said, and it seems that it probably is in that latter category about. I tend to look at it more as a spiritual thing, like love and those types of concepts that we hold. One of the examples I've heard sometimes is like when we look at the universe, for example, and scientists postulate that there's things like dark matter that they can't observe directly. They can, they draw inferences, and they say, well, we look at the size of the galaxy, and it seems like, by the amount of gravity and the number of stars that are in the galaxy, they should weigh this much, but it actually seems like it weighs a lot more than that. And so the only explanation they can come up with is, and they just, made up this term, dark matter. They don't even know what it is. And it seems like, is God more analogous to something like that, where we can't measure it directly, but we see possible signs?
Let's pause. I know Neil wants to get in here, and I'm going to have thoughts on this too. So let's pause for a second and address this part. Go ahead, Neil.
Oh, you bring up dark matter, which is something that I've kind of been fascinated with a little bit myself over the past few years. And no, we've not directly observed dark matter, but we have observed the effects of dark matter. And so they know something is there, but they just haven't been able to actually observe it, because they know it's there, but they don't know exactly what they're looking for. They see the effects of it because it counters out the gravitational stuff. So eventually they will, there are lots of things that we couldn't see in the past, but we ultimately eventually found. One of the things that pops into my head would be the Higgs boson. They knew by the math that it was there. So when they had those big colliders going, they finally found it, right? So eventually, I think they will find what it is that dark matter is. But until then, all we can do for now is just sort of work with the effects of it that they can measure.
And I would say, when it comes to something like dark matter, now, for me, falsifiability is key. And so while I have friends who are physicists who talk about string theory and a bunch of things that I cannot or do not properly comprehend, I don't know for sure if I can. Maybe somebody taught me. But when you look at something like dark matter, as Neil was pointing out, this is a clearly identified in the model as a speculative work in progress that is the result of the math. There is actual hard data, and crunching those numbers and trying to figure out, hang on, there's this percentage of the universe does not fit these calculations. And so we're going to call that for now, because it's nebulous, we don't know what it is. We're going to call it dark matter so that we have a label for the thing that we're still trying to work on and discover. But when it comes to God, I'm not aware of any math or any data that anyone has pointed to that says, here's the gap in our calculation that we're going to call God while we're working it out. Instead, they don't do any math, they don't present any data, and then they go and assert exactly what God is and what he wants and who he wants you to sleep with and all that. So I don't think that even, the God issue, I don't even think it rises to the level, even in the ballpark of speculative models like dark matter. What is the math or data that makes the God question in the same category as dark matter?
That's a great question, and this is how I would go about. I think conceptualizing maybe an answer. One concept that we have that it's prevalent of God is of a mind, a sort of powerful, timeless, spaceless mind that doesn't have physical characteristics. And that's sort of used somewhat as a framework to explain our own, consciousness and how that might work. And so, if science is going to be possible,
hang on, Mark. What I was asking was, are we aware of any math or data that is directly analogous to what we're talking about with dark matter with God? And your response was to go back to this ill-defined spirit. I don't even know what spiritual means. Can you define spiritual? Can you show anything that is spiritual? Because to me, spiritual ends up being the label that means whatever people conveniently need it to mean, and doesn't actually provide anything substantive.
No, I take your point. I mean, and which is somewhat does almost sound a little bit like when we're saying like the label for dark matter, because we don't know what it is, but we have we like you said, we could see that there's something that's off with our equations. So it's either dark matter or our physics is wrong. I mean, that's the other possibility, that we just don't we don't have.
Yes, I'm aware of what the possibilities are, Mark. I'm aware what the possibilities are. Are you going to get to the part you called in to present evidence for God? We've gone down this path.
Correct.
I'm trying to figure out, I was explaining how things are going to fall into different categories. I don't see that God even gets anywhere near any science. Otherwise, there would be a Nobel Prize in a particular science for discovering God or showing God. So what God are you convinced is real, and what is your evidence for it?
Okay, so, and this is what I was leading to, and the science is not there yet, but I'm trying to give you a scientific basis for maybe one day how we might get to evidence that might fall within the category that you're referring to. Yes. So the science is... No,
listen, Mark. Listen. Now you're saying the science isn't there yet, and you would like to give me your speculative guess as to how science might someday prove God. And I say this hang on. I say this with as much love in my heart as possible. I genuinely do not give a fuck and do not want to waste my audience's time with your speculation of what science might one day prove about God. How dare you call in and tell us that you're going to give us evidence for God, only to then get backed into a corner where you're going to say, no, let me tell you how science might prove it one day. I don't give a fuck. Do you have a way to demonstrate a God now?
So by demonstrating that consciousness is beyond physical processes, which they're doing right now, because there's scientists who work on people who this is like breakthrough science that's happening right now, where they're studying people whose heart stop beating.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. Mark, you have no clue what you're talking about. You have no clue what you're talking about. The science is not suggest. There is no science anywhere on the planet that is actually demonstrating that consciousness requires anything other than the physical?
There is. If you watch Robert Kuhn's program, Closer to Truth, he has a video out like right now where he's interviewing a cardiologist who works on people who die, they flatline, and he said that after they flatline, they continue to have conscious experience. Now, they need to continue doing the work. That's why I was saying, like,
I'm sorry that you've decided to watch a bunch of pseudoscience instead of actual science. Yes, it is pseudoscience. Okay. How many times you want?
Why would you say it's pseudoscience?
Mark, I can sit here and say it is pseudoscience just as many times as you can say it's not.
Science. Yeah.
Right. But because what I'm saying is, like, he's not the doctor he's like a leading doctor at NYU. He's not like a quack doctor. He's just saying that we're seeing things that we don't have an explanation for yet. And so, and Robert Kuhn is
shut up now, Mark. Mark, stop talking. Stop talking and listening. We're seeing things that we don't have an explanation for yet. Didn't I tell you that I don't give a fuck about your assertions about how science might someday demonstrate the truth or falseness of whether or not there's a God? Didn't I ask you if you have evidence for it now? How dare you follow that up with, here's the science that tells us we don't know? Because I'm fine with the answer, we don't know. I'm not the one who's claiming to believe in a God. What God do you believe in, and what is your evidence for it? Last chance.
Okay. The evidence is philosophical. It's philosophical. It's historical. You have direct experiences with God. I was asking.
Goodbye.
Oh my goodness. I know exactly what he's talking about too. And one of the things that he's forgotten to mention is that, yes, brain activity does go past flatline, but whether or not it's conscious experiences is still up for debate. Brain death occurs, shortly after flatlining. And of course, cell death is the last thing to occur. So, when your mind dies there, Mark, if you're still listening somewhere, when your brain dies, your consciousness goes with it.
So far, it's so frustrating because I hear from people like Mark who are like, I've always been kind of a skeptic and I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. First of all, that's not true, because you're sitting here looking for some way for science to eventually explain something that you couldn't even come close to defining. Like I gave you your one last chance, which is tell me what God you believe in and what the evidence is for it. And you did not start by telling me what God you believed in. And you didn't present evidence. Instead, you said the evidence is philosophical and historic. That is a complete cop-out. It is a complete... So if any scientist stepped up to a podium and said, I'm here to tell you about the truth of dark matter, and I have evidence for you. And somebody said, great, what is your evidence? And they said, well, first, let me tell you about this. No. I need you to define dark matter and tell me what the evidence is. Okay, so the evidence is philosophical and historic. They would be laughed off of the stage because it does not in any respect demonstrate anything.
By the way,
it's so weird.
On the dark matter topic. Yeah, it is. On the dark matter topic, hypothetically, it makes up about 85% of the matter of the universe, they figure. So, and that's a big chunk.
Yeah. I need to do one thing. There we go. We have 3 more callers to get to in this short here before we dig in on super chats, and one of them is a theist of some stripe, although that's debatable as to whether or not pantheism counts as theism or whether it's more like sexed up atheism. But Xavier in Miami, welcome to the show. You think you've got an argument for pantheism?
I think I do.
Can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah, we hear you.
You're a little tinny.
Sweet. Okay, so basically, God is the ground of all being. We're all part of what or who God is. It's basically a universal consciousness that spans all religions and culture, even species. We didn't invent God. Rather, when we evolved as a species, we discovered there's some consciousness. Religion is just different languages people use to describe their consciousness. Basically, a deification of nature. God is simply all of nature. So basically, Mother Nature. You can just call God Mother Nature. When people worship what they think is God, they're worshiping a divine version of themselves, just deifying nature. So, yeah, I agree with atheism. It's correct in that there's no supernatural deity in the sky. There's no mythical stories. There's nothing beyond the natural. Rather, all of the natural is part of what God is. And I'm going on I'm basically going along the lines of Reza Aslan, Karen Armstrong, and John Shelby Spong. They're kind of like a mysticism.
So, what makes you think that the consciousness is universal
For human beings?
Hey,
Well,
you know
yeah,
what
we're
else
all
is universal
conscious,
for
that's
human
what we know,
beings? Blood.
Okay.
So I get the question here. You seem to be arguing. Well, first of all, you said you accept everything of atheism, but I'm trying to be as charitable as possible with that. So if you're claiming there's nothing supernatural and there's no God, then and that basically gods are our deification of ourselves or nature, I'm not interested in hyperbole. Why would anyone call themselves a pantheist if they don't actually believe there is something divine?
Because what we're calling divine is actually our mythologizing of nature.
Hang on,
not just in
Savior. I'm asking, what value is there in calling yourself a pantheist? If you and I both agree that we have no reason to believe that there's anything supernatural, we have no reason to believe there's any actual God, and you're now saying, I think what people are saying when they say God is a hyperbolic deification of nature, why on earth would you call yourself a pantheist?
Yeah.
Because it better explains our religious experiences, our mystical experiences.
No,
even our ancestors before. Okay.
No, that doesn't explain anything. So you are here saying, so pantheism is about what one believes about the divine. You are taking that a step further, a step away, one meta level removed, and saying, oh, it's a description of how we describe God. But that's a sociological thing, and that's an argument that you can't prove. It's not like you can prove there is no God. You can't prove that everybody's wrong. You can't prove that all religions are pointing to the same thing. You can't prove that people are just deifying nature. This is just your opinion. And at the end of the day, when I go to someone and you say, why not say you're an atheist? Instead, you opt for the pantheist label. What does the pantheist label add to the conversation about a God?
Yeah.
Sociology. That would, I guess, sociology, if I'm being honest. It's part of our human experience. Yeah, it's part of our human experience. So adding a label.
So I'm doing a show where I'm getting people to tell me what they believe and why. Did you call in and identify as a pantheist only so you could tell me that you're really an atheist and you believe that people generally, when they're talking about God, are engaged in some sloppy thinking and hyperbole?
I'm calling to say that we're actually pantheists. You're just denying.
No, we're fucking not. Neil, are you a pantheist?
Nope.
I'm not either. So
Nope,
you don't get to say
close.
we're a pantheist.
I want to know where the consciousness thing falls into this, because I still don't.
Yeah, I
see
still
where
want to
you're
get that
tying
too.
together.
Well, Sam Harris wrote a book that even atheists can be spiritual. They can have a
I don't give a
spirituality.
shit. Of the two of us, I'm the one that sat on stage with Sam Harris multiple times. What Sam Harris wrote in a book is irrelevant. Yes, I fully acknowledge that atheists can be or identify as spiritual, but I don't know what spiritual means.
Your own
I don't have any
definition of it.
evidence that there's anything spiritual, and an atheist doesn't need to be spiritual. And if an atheist came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm also spiritual," I would ask them, "What the hell do you mean by that, and why are you using that word?" So don't come to me with Sam Harris wrote a book, because I genuinely don't give a fuck what Sam has ever said. I appreciate the man. I've interacted with him. I like him. But if you come in here and say, "Oh, well, Sam Harris wrote a book," well, I don't care. I want to know what the evidence is, not what Sam said.
Okay.
So what's the deal?
Stuff too.
Why are you identifying as a pantheist when you're an atheist?
And calling us pantheists.
I just think it better explains the human experience, because we can't deny religious experience. We can hardly explain it. How can people believe in a supernatural? I just think pantheism better explains the world than atheism.
You're wrong.
All religions is universal.
No, you're wrong. So
No.
first of all, pantheism doesn't better explain the world. It muddies things up. You're basically, you might as well be saying hyperbole better explains the world. That's simply not true. It may tell you something about us, but if somebody says, "Are you a theist or an atheist?" and you say you're a pantheist, and then you say, "I think pantheism better explains the human condition," you're no longer talking about pantheism. You're talking about sociology. You might as well be saying you're a sociologist, because I also believe that people engage in hyperbole and sloppy thinking and irrational thought and exaggerate their confidence in and their description of gods. But I'm not a pantheist, because a pantheist is someone who believes that God is one with everything. And I don't think there is a God to be one with everything. I think everything is everything. I don't need to add something else to it.
I don't think I'm adding to it. You're calling it everything. I'm calling it God. I think you're taking that sociology.
Xavier, the thing that I'm calling everything, would you agree that it is everything?
Yeah.
Okay, so we both agree that everything is everything, and you are calling everything God, and you literally just said you don't think you're adding anything to it. You added the God label to everything. Why isn't everything already good enough without adding the God label? What does the God label add that edifies our understanding of everything?
Because basically, we can't say religion. We can say religion's claims are false, but religion itself exists. And so there's religious experience. So I think pantheism just explains better that humans have religious experiences, and why do they mythologize?
I'm going to stop and let Neil ask whatever he wants, because you are not listening to me or thinking about what I've asked. Neil, maybe you can do better.
I'm sorry. I'm trying.
I still... That's okay, Xavier. It's all right. Just collect your thoughts, okay? Because I kind of still want to know how the whole consciousness ties into this. Like, do you believe in an afterlife and that your consciousness somehow goes past the death of your body?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I just know we're all atoms.
That's a good answer. Yeah, you're right. At the basic level, your consciousness, which comes from the mind, is literally atoms and electrons, which essentially give us our mind. So that's what consciousness, at least on a basic level, we can call it that.
So it continues to exist in a different form as atoms, I guess.
How? Well, essentially, your atoms do go back to the universe, but that's not the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, if I burn something, the atoms are still around, but that thing doesn't continue to exist as those different atoms. Its constituent parts are still around, but the pattern is what matters, and the pattern is gone.
And if you think like the whole universal thing there, Xavier, I mean, clearly all the atoms that are in your body came from a whole bunch of exploding stars in the earlier forms of the universe and the cosmos. So, and they had to do that in order for you to be here. So those atoms, you're just returning them back to the space in the universe that you borrowed them from in the first place.
Yeah, that's science.
Yeah. So where's the science for universal consciousness?
Other than we're all atoms and we remain atoms after we die, there isn't really anything scientific. I guess it's just sociology.
Hang on.
You're saying sociology is not a science.
I'm saying what isn't a science?
Sociology.
No, that's not what I said. But sociology is definitely not a hard science. But the question I asked is, where's the science that proves universal consciousness? And what you said is, apart from the fact that we're all atoms. Okay, that sentence, apart from the fact that we're all atoms, in no way counts as scientific evidence for universal consciousness. So I keep asking questions, and not just of you, but of callers in general, that have a specific purpose. I'm trying to understand what people are talking about. And so if you say there's universal consciousness, and Neil asks, how do you know that? And I ask, what's the scientific evidence for it? Why would you define universal consciousness and give us the evidence for universal consciousness? Because atoms are not conscious.
No.
Correct. I can't define it. I can't answer that question.
Okay.
It kind of goes beyond science, I guess.
It goes beyond science. Okay. I don't understand when people are saying, I believe something and I can't tell you what it is or why. I can understand that not everybody has, granted, there are things that, if you ask me, Matt, define this thing that you believe and why, I might fail, but I'm not going to call into a show on the subject if I haven't at least done the diligence to say, okay, what is my position and why do I hold it? So you called in and mentioned universal consciousness, which Neil picked up on right away. And now we're at a point where you have nothing to offer, not a definition of, nor evidence for universal consciousness. And I think the only thing I'd say is call back another time. And in the meantime, figure out what you mean by universal consciousness and why you're convinced it's real, because then we can talk about it.
Also, Xavier, a little tip for you. In order for consciousness to even be a thing, it requires a mind, as far as we can tell. So if you can figure out if the universe actually has a mind, then maybe there's something to it. But so far, we've come up bupkis on that one.
Yeah. I've been asking for any sort of demonstration of consciousness absent a brain.
Yeah.
Nobody's come up with one yet, but anyway, I appreciate it, Xavier. Thanks for calling and call us back and kind of drill down a little bit more so that we can know it. Because if all I'm going to do is ask questions and get, I don't knows, and I just think that's the way it is, we're kind of stuck. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's great. I think I can shoot one more.
Okay. Give it a shot.
There's consciousness within the universe.
Okay.
So
sure.
I guess that's your evidence. It exists. So because we are in the universe, we're part of the universe. Therefore, the universe has consciousness because we have consciousness.
Yes, but go ahead.
Are you I've heard an expression before that we are here for the universe to interact with itself, or something along those lines. Like we are the beings that the universe had come to be so that the universe could experience itself. Is that sort of the angle you're taking with all this?
Yeah, pretty. No, that sounds about right.
Sure, but there's still no evidence for that. We are literally, I don't know if you realize how many things had to come into alignment in order for us to be here.
A lot.
Exactly.
A lot of natural selection.
My guess is, and I do believe that probably somewhere out there are other species. However, whether or not we come into contact with them, that's a whole other ball of wax. But anyways, I still think that we are a rarity in the universe, and I don't think we're the lucky ones that got picked by a non-agent like the universe that doesn't have a mind to experience itself. You see what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah.
The other thing,
I think we're a happy accident.
when you say there is consciousness within the universe, therefore the universe has consciousness, that's a tautology. You're saying the same thing twice. But you're trying to then expand it from there's consciousness within the universe, therefore the universe has consciousness, therefore the universe is consciousness or possesses consciousness as a property of it. This is the fallacy of composition, when you assume that something is true for a member of the group is true for the whole. So there's also poop in the universe. There's rocks in the universe. There are desires in the universe, which are a part of consciousness. Consciousness includes desires, but that doesn't mean that consciousness is merely desire. And so what you're doing is you're kind of extending this into this particular fallacy. But while the universe includes things which are conscious, it also includes things which are not conscious, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we say there's consciousness within the universe, therefore the universe has consciousness, we could also say there are things in the universe that aren't conscious, therefore the universe has non-consciousness, or the universe is not conscious. It's a mistake either way to take a property of the group and try to extend it to the universe. And this is what happens when people are like, we're the universe's way of sensing itself. No, because that line of thought has the universe as an intentional agent seeking to explain itself or seeking to experience itself. And this is anthropomorphizing the universe.
That's the word I was trying to remember.
I will send you back to the drawing board and call us back with a better take on consciousness.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Xavier.
Thanks, Xavier.
We have one more call, and then we're going to get on to the super chats to close out the show.
Super chats.
Yes.
I didn't get a chance to do one. A super chat.
Well, you're going to get a chance to read half of them because we're going to alternate back and forth. We have Aristotle, pronouns are he, him, in Greece, calling to talk to us about the EI. Welcome, Aristotle.
Hello.
Hi. You're live.
Aristotle.
Aristotle, you're on the line.
Hello. Hi, Neil. Hi, Matt.
Hi.
First of all, English is not my first language, so excuse me if I don't understand some things.
Hey, buddy, anyone that knows more than one language, I'm in awe of any time.
Matt, I have been watching you for at least 10 years, and you really helped me develop and expand my epistemology, and thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you so much. How can we help today?
I just wanted to talk about the evil eye, and if you heard about that thing. Because I have never seen you talk about that, so I wanted to be in the bank, you know.
Yeah, because I don't know of anybody who actually believes in it.
Yeah.
And I don't get calls about it. This is probably one of the first times I've ever gotten a call about it.
Yeah. It's mostly a European thing, and mostly Greek, Italian, I think, like Mediterranean thing. That's why maybe.
I had a Romanian friend, the only friend that I ever had that actually believed that the evil eye was something, and she was Romanian. So you're right. I think it's more European in general.
Yeah, in Greece, it's like 99% of people believe that, even if they are theists or not.
Okay, I don't believe you. I think you're exaggerating. I don't think there's a place in the world where 99% of people all believe one thing. But I will accept that it is far more prominent there. But go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to talk about that. It's the supernatural belief that if someone looks at you with envy, it can make you feel sick, give you headaches, or even bring suffering into your life and make your business fail and things.
Yeah. I'm wondering,
well,
there's lots of superstitious things that people believe. There's lots of
knocking on wood,
old wives' tales and folk remedies. And
sure.
Why did this one stick in your head? I mean, are you running into a lot of people who are, I mean, to me, the evil eye.
99% was an exaggeration, surely, but I mean, like, there's really a lot of people that believe that, even if they're not theists.
It strikes me, and I could be completely wrong because I'm not in an area where nobody ever mentions the evil eye around me in any kind of strong sense. It's kind of like I hear more about karma than I do evil eye, but even from people who cite karma, most of them are not people who actually believe that karma is a real thing. They're kind of using it as a poetic thing. Like, oh, be careful what you do because it's going to come back to you. And I always viewed evil eye as the same thing. But you're telling me that the overwhelming majority of people around you seriously think that looking at someone can do something to them through some sort of supernatural ability?
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know why it's a lustful look.
Excuse me, say that again? No, envy.
Did you earlier say? Oh, envy. That's what it was. Okay, where's my mind at today? So yeah. Okay, so envy. I'm curious as to why that has to be the emotion attached to an evil eye.
I really don't know. It's a really old belief. I think it's more than 5,000
it's like 5,000 years old, according to Google.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it comes from, like, they thought that the gaze, when you look at someone, it's like a laser, that if you look at someone, the light goes to them, not the light goes in your eye. So, yeah, that's how it maybe started.
Right.
And there's also a ritual about that. That's how do you determine if someone has the eye? There's a ritual about that.
Yeah, I wonder.
What about me? I might have it.
Yeah, Mad Eye Moody. I'm wondering.
I don't know. I don't believe it.
So it seems to me really straightforward. If I ran across someone who said they actually believe in the evil eye, I would ask them what we could do to test for that.
Oh, yeah, I actually tried to do that with my father. Like, the test for that is
cool.
that, I mean, to see if someone has the eye, you take a cup full of water, almost full of water, and you just drop a drop of olive oil there. If the oil dissolves in the water, that means that they have the eye. If it stays whole,
how do you know if the oil is whole?
How do I know if?
How do you know if the oil is holy?
Oh, no, it doesn't have to be holy. Olive oil. Sorry, my accent.
Oh, olive.
Olive oil. Yeah.
So wait, you take a cup of water and you put a drop of olive oil in there, and
yep.
And what happens to it?
And what happens?
If someone has the eye, the person you are referring when doing that water thing, the oil dissolves in the water, like it disappears almost.
Oh, instead of floats on top like oil should do.
Yeah.
But you can agitate water and disperse a drop of oil to the point where it looks like it is integrated into water. I mean, oil and water don't mix, but they do.
That's right.
In the short term. From the standpoint of what we can actually see.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. Aristotle, I don't think I have anything to add to this other than somebody would need to prove to me that the evil eye is real. And mixing a drop of oil into water isn't going to be proving anything to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do that at work all the time.
I know. I try to replicate that with my. I'm like, do the same thing with another cup. The one, bless it with your word, because we bless it with some words from the Bible. And I was like, yeah, do another cup, but don't bless it, and let's see what happens. And they will never listen to me and do that. And it's like, that's really, so every family I know does that. Every family I know.
Yeah, it's not really a thing where I live. Go ahead, Neil.
I can tell you one thing. Looking up evil eye on Google, because I often use Google to look up stuff that I'm not overly familiar with. There's some really beautiful jewelry that's like evil eye jewelry. So maybe get your family some of that stuff for Christmas this year.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of them already.
That's okay. I'm going to let you go, Aristotle, because I want to wrap this up, but I appreciate you calling in to ask. I wish I had more information, but I really don't.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Aristotle.
It's, Neil, you listening to you, I'm going to let Jimmy get set up for our super chats now, but listening to you talk about how there's really cool art stuff. The amount of wonderful art and iconography that comes from religions and superstitions, floors me. Like, I know. My ex-wife Beth loved little white churches. Even had a book of just pictures of little white churches, and I love them too. I don't like what happens in them.
Architecture,
but yeah, I like churches have had some of the best architecture because they've had the money and the people with the skills.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, evil eye iconography. I love the imagery. It's the art aspect is good. It would be one of my favorite Christian rock bands. I was just had a little quick back and forth with Seth Andrews the other day about this. Was Petra. Those guys.
I was just going to say Petra, right? They're great.
They were legitimately brilliant songwriters and musicians.
Yep.
If I didn't speak English, I would still be listening to albums like Not of This World and just singing along with it. But I know what the words mean and I know the message there, and so I can't enjoy it as much.
Sure.
But I can still at least listen. I could, matter of fact, I could probably put one of the early Petra albums on and enjoy it.
Groove.
But I would enjoy it more if Christianity were dead, because then it would be like Thor. Sorry to, I'm not, all right, I'm not sorry at all to the pagans that are pissed off at me right now. But, if it were the gods that we take less seriously, I can appreciate the art and iconography from them than I can from Christianity.
Sure. It's all, I mean, you got to think that when you believe in something so much, you're putting just that much more effort into doing the art as well. Right. So I've seen some beautiful art. I've been all over Europe. I've been all over the Middle East, and I've seen some artwork that's absolutely stunning. Some of the cathedrals and temples that I've been to are just beautiful. So
I didn't bother to look it up, but I did notice that if you do just a Google image search for evil eye, what I noticed there that's overwhelming right off the bat is how blue all of it is. And I wonder if there's something about the recessive blue-eyed trait where there's a stigma associated with it that's tied to the evil eye. I don't know.
You might be onto something there, because it's a relatively new eye color too. So maybe
can you imagine
born out of that?
Yeah, you're sitting there. I think a cat is ripping something up behind me.
Sounds like it.
Hang on. Anyway, imagine you're in a culture where nobody's ever had blue eyes, and somebody shows up with blue eyes. What kind of oddity is that? Is it going to turn into something like the evil eye? I don't know. I'll look into it some more.
Definitely.
That's going to be my obsession for the next week. Is let me figure out what's up with the evil eye, because somebody called me about it. But I have super chats, and we're going to read all of them that were over $10. First of all, before we even get to any of them, Neil and I are going to take turns here reading them, assuming you can stay. I don't know how long you've got.
I don't have to be at work till 4 a.m. tomorrow, so we're good.
If nobody else asks you before we go, I need you to tell me about Legos. But
Oh shit, yeah.
Somebody's like,
whole
make sure you
bunch
ask me
right
about
there.
Legos, and I'm, yeah, I see them. But we're going to read all these super chats. But as a reminder, the Line Network here is growing and doing great. And this week we added several shows, including Monday's Skeptalk and yesterday's HOSTility. Tomorrow will be Transatlantic Call-In Show. I will have Jimmy get me the details on what's coming up. But we greatly appreciate both everybody who's been volunteering to help out and to everybody who's been tuning in, whether you super chat or not, whether you are able to contribute monetarily or just by being here and commenting in chat or asking the questions and encouraging people to tune in and call so that we get calls like Xavier's, where we're trying to get to some sort of understanding on what you mean by universal consciousness or pantheism, because I agree with Xavier about what people are doing, but yet we're not going to use the same label. I'm an atheist, not a pantheist. I don't know what the value is. But yeah,
That's right.
let's
Make sure
let's
you
do some super
understand
chat.
what you believe before coming here too, right?
Yeah, and I get it. If you're like, wow, I haven't thought about it enough. I'm not quite sure what I believe. Awesome. Do you know how?
You're on the right.
You know how much my face would light up hearing somebody say that? But yeah. Here we go. $10 from James Call. Did Matt get sick from eating weird sandwiches? Inquiring minds want to know. No, I did not get sick from that. I got sick, from something else that I ate. I think we don't know what it was. But yeah, I was basically living within 10 feet of the restroom for all of Thanksgiving Thursday and the day after on that Friday.
That sucks, dude. Sucks.
It's good that we didn't leave and we weren't going to family. It was just me and Arden hanging out, doing our stuff, and I was miserable. And so I'm glad it's over.
Yeah.
But thanks, James.
Birthday was yesterday, right?
Yes.
So in 1999 from Greg Markowski, my band is, this one's right up my alley. My band is rehearsing on Wednesdays, so I've been watching the next day, including tonight's show. But it's live, Greg. You're okay. My band rehearses on Fridays, FYI, Greg.
My band no longer rehearses because I wasn't in a band. I just piddled around on instruments until it annoyed people. And 999 from Claire. Should I donate used clothing and stuff to Goodwill, the Salvation Army, or neither? Okay. So
good question.
Let me preface this by saying I don't know enough, but there are websites that you can go to find out what portion of each dollar goes to the cause and what portion of your donations are actually being used towards the goal. Generally speaking, I don't give money to the Salvation Army, but I have donated items to the Salvation Army because at the end of the day, I'm happy. I'd rather work with organizations like Atheists Helping the Homeless and Humanists at Work, who I know and trust care about just helping people. I don't know enough about Goodwill or Salvation Army. I generally avoid giving either of them cash.
And it's always good to look in, you Google your area to see if they have a humanist type organization that does something that's similar.
Yeah. I know that like Goodwill, I mean, I know they provide jobs. I don't know how good the jobs are. There's a number of Goodwill facilities around here. I've gone to and shopped at Goodwills before, and usually I'll go to like the Goodwill auctions because that when they get the nice things up, they'll have the auction there more than I would just for clothes. But I know that people who need clothes will often go to there and they can get good deals on things. And it's same thing with pots and pans. I've seen families have a much better Christmas because of something like Goodwill, but I don't know the inner workings of what's behind the scenes there. At the end of the day, for you, Claire, I'd say if you're giving things to help other people and they actually go to help those other people, I don't care if they went through Goodwill or Salvation Army. I want those people to get help.
Yep. So good on you for that, Claire. I send all my stuff mostly around here to Value Village, which is the same as like a Goodwill.
Nice.
So we got $20 from the Jim Tanker. Thank you, Jim. I started watching TAE, or the Atheist Experience, on YouTube while in Askrakistan. I don't think I've ever been there, but I remember Matt saying that some people didn't even know the word atheist, what the word atheist means, and I realized that it applied to me. I've heard this as well, Matt. I don't know about you. People knew that they weren't believers, but they didn't know about the word atheist, or that there were people called atheists. Have you come across people like that? Obviously, I have, because of what I do. But
over the years, there were people on the show or who called into shows who didn't realize that. I was wrong. Early on, when I was still a believer, to me, atheists were different from just non-believers, because
right.
On Sundays, we would go to church, and anybody who came as a guest would fill out the little visitation card. And Mondays was visitation night. So you would get together, everybody would meet at the church. They divide up all the visitation cards based on the region that they were in. And then you would go out with 3 or 4 people in your car, and you would go to those people's homes and say, hey, you stopped at our church yesterday and you filled out a visitor's card. We're here to talk to you and everything else. And in some of those cases, we knew we were talking to people who weren't Christians, but the assumption, I think, is that everybody believed in a God. They just didn't understand Christianity, I think. And so, yeah, I would have gotten that wrong quite often.
Wow.
But thanks so much, Jim Tanker, or the Jim Tanker. Jim. I don't want to short you. 10 euros from Jordan. I guess. Yeah. Jordan. Matt, possibility needs to be demonstrated. I agree. But people seem to use the word possible for everything that they can imagine. Is this some sort of equivocation? I'm not a native speaker. Cool. Thank you for adding that.
You did well, Jordan.
It is. So there's,
I don't know if I'd say
a lot of people will. Yeah, there is an equivocation going on there, but it's not an equivocation fallacy in the intent. What they're speaking is kind of colloquially, off the cuff, commonly. And you can say something like, everything's possible, even if you don't mean it. It's hyperbole. So there's a difference between saying, I think that's where I was going. We can, what's that?
I said, I think that's where I was going with it, hyperbole.
There's a difference between, if I have a 6-sided die, I can demonstrate that it is possible to roll each of those 6 sides. But I can't demonstrate that it's possible to roll a 7th side. And so not all possibilities are equal. In fact, when we get to where we've defined the potential group of candidate explanations, everything else becomes impossible. Is it possible that if I flip a coin, it could land on its edge? Sure, that's in the realm of feasible possibilities. Is it likely? No. Is it possible that it would land on its edge and then jump back up in the air and land on its edge again? We have no reason to think that is possible, given what we understand about physics. Does that mean we can assert?
We can try, but we'll be here for a while.
Yeah. Does that mean we can assert that it's impossible? Yes. As a matter of practicality, we could say colloquially, that's not possible.
Student Dr. Ben. $10 from Student Dr. Ben.
It's amazing.
Why are you donating $10, buddy? Well, first of all, thank you. But that should be going to, wait, never mind. You're in the Army. They're paying for all that stuff. Love you, 10. I'm so happy to see Neil here tonight. I give him credit for bringing me into the online atheist community. I'm forever Team Starwart.
Thanks so much, Ben. By the way, I don't know if Arden told you, but our hairless rats gave birth. And in addition to the hairless rats, we also have some Rexes and some Dumbos. So we're going to have some really cool potential pet rats. I think our hairless just gave birth to
really cool
8 or 9. And one of the others just gave birth to a litter of 16.
Holy crap. What are they eating?
Well, there's only 8 nipples, so they're taking turns.
At least there's an even amount to swap out, right? So
it's right.
And if you want to know what the Star Wart thing is about that Ben is mentioning here, I'll just let me grab something real quick.
Do it. Also, Ben just has like one test left to pass. So congrats, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's right. He was mentioning that earlier. I ordered what I thought was going to be the Ultimate Collector Series Millennium Falcon at a reduced price. I saw an ad somewhere. I think it was Facebook. Never trust Facebook ads, people. And they sent me this instead.
Oh my gosh.
That's amazing. I highly suggest you wait, the official company sent you that?
No, it's some knockoff company.
Oh, never mind. I thought you were talking about like a legit typo, and I was going to tell you like you need to get that protected, sealed, everything, because that will be worth a ton one day. But no. Sorry.
Yeah, no, this is a knockoff.
The funny thing is, it totally is. And the funny thing is, you know how Lego parts come in bags that are numbered? Well, a few of them were numbered. Some of them were the same number. I had 2 like number 1 bags. And then one of the bags was a Ziploc. Okay, so I don't know what the hell they sent me. I promised everyone I'd eventually put it together online at some point. But at some point we'll do it. But yeah, that was just too funny. So it's become kind of a running joke on the show now.
We got $10 from Iseridian. Wow, I probably butchered that, but I try. Matt, I only wanted to say thank you. I'm a changed thinker because of you. I'd also like to know why I shouldn't be absolutely certain of this statement. I do not currently know everything. Okay.
It's an odd one.
How would you know if there was something you didn't know? I don't know.
I've heard someone use that as an argument against God.
The reason, I think you could be maximally certain that you do not currently know everything, but the reason you can't be absolutely certain is because your certainty measurement can't be more confident than the foundation, the logical foundation that it's based on. And since you have no way to demonstrate that logic is in fact absolute, even though it seems so, and I would agree that it's maximally confident, you can't demonstrate that logic is inviolable, which means you cannot be absolutely certain about anything. So just stick with maximally certain and say, I'm as certain as I can be, as certain as possible, which may or may not be absolute certain, that I don't currently know everything. But I'm not even convinced that you could know that you don't currently know everything, because the temptation is to say, sorry, this is the way my brain works. The temptation is to say, Neil knows something that I don't know, but I don't know that that's true. I suspect that Neil knows many things that I don't know. For example, Neil knows what Lego is off screen, 5th from the bottom, even if he can't recall it immediately. But he knows that, and I don't know it. But see,
sorry,
but I can't demonstrate that, and the only way to demonstrate it would be to show that he does. At which point, I would also know it, and then the question becomes, how can I show that Neil actually knew this before me, and not that in a like hard solipsistic universe, the knowledge came into being for both of us at the same time. Anyway, that was fun.
Have a conversation about it earlier.
Yeah, I apologize. Sometimes I'm going to geek on the philosophy stuff for a little bit. But thanks so much for the contribution there.
It's marvelous to watch.
That reminded me of this one time where I got high and had a solipsistic crisis, where I was worried. Yeah. I was worried that like if there was some scientific concept that was too complicated for me to grasp, it would mean that the universe didn't exist, and I would cause the universe to break. As I tried to just, in my mind, like start working through some physics. I think later that night, I also thought I might manually control my breath and could die if I forgot to breathe.
There was a period of time where I seriously entertained the notion that I might be the only real person, that everybody else could be an automaton.
Yeah. I still
Truman Show.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so we got a $20 from P-Bot Hulu. Anyways. Wait. Wasn't that question on Doctor Who episode once? Wait. One always tells the truth is good, and one always the truth and lie, is bad. I'm sure you ask the one on the right if the one on the left can tell a lie or something like that. I know it's that the guy at the fork of the road, or the two guys at the fork of the road, and one fork leads to the town of people that always lie, and one fork leads to the town of people that always tell the truth, and you don't know which one's from which town, and you got to figure it out so you can get to the truth town.
And it's always a meta level or a recursive thing. It's like if I were to ask him this question, would he say yes, or would he say no? And so you end up processing out the double negative on those as well. But that's because truth and lies have a definition that we accept. Truth is that which comports with reality, and lie is that which conflicts with reality. That's not necessarily the case for good and evil, but
it's true. That's true. See, we're doing it already.
See, it's true, but it might not be good.
It's true.
$10 from Nuzzy D. Thank you all so much. I think what concerns theists most is that secular humanism lacks a fixed ethical framework. As a new father and atheist, can you suggest resources for studying, discussing morality? I mean, I'll skip my lecture on the superiority of secular morality. I think Sam Harris's book, The Moral Landscape, is a good starting place for a version of consequentialism. It's not without its problems, but from a more kind of realistic standpoint, there are books on humanism and on raising kids as a humanist that do a really good job of giving a base level introduction to secular moral systems without actually calling it that. And at the end of the day, for me, it's pretty simple, and it's simpler than most people make it. All we're trying to do is figure out what results in a better world. And we know that we can be wrong about it, and we know that we haven't defined better world. What Neil may think is a better world may be very different from what I think is a better world. Which musical instrument is preferable to somebody, that might make their world better. Mm-hmm. But recognizing where we're talking about a universal thing, like this is, who's the best dobro player on the planet?
I think we can agree on lots of things that are better for everyone over in general. And then we're going to have our own little preferences that we can point out that make our world better, personally.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of room for debate. Like, who's the greatest guitarist of all time? You're going to have your opinion. You can make arguments for a bunch of them. Maybe when you get to like dobro player, it has to be Jerry Douglas, but maybe I'm also biased there. But maybe we can recognize that those questions aren't moral questions. And at the end of the day, what we're asking is not about personal preferences, but about the universe and how it impacts our lives. So if Neil does something and he thinks it doesn't impact anybody, but he finds out later that this thing that he suspected was innocuous actually wound up creating hardship for 12 people in, Botswana, through some butterfly effect thing. That is the point at which Neil would recognize there was a moral consequence to what he did, and he might not have realized that moral consequence before that. So
that's right. Yeah. So $20 from Emergen, if that's how you pronounce it. I apologize if not. Thank you for the $20. Matt, don't feel bad that you don't know what spiritual means. Nobody else does either. It's a form of hand-wavium.
Yes.
Hand-wavium. Is that some new Harry Potter thing?
I think hand-wavium is related to copium. But
copium.
It's a margin, nice. By the way. I asked on the show the other day. A margin.
A margin.
Okay.
There we go.
All right.
I will do my best to remember a margin's pronunciation. $10 from Cyberhex. A lot of talk tonight about consciousness and its role in reality. Have you or Neil ever heard of the work from the physicists and mathematicians at the Quantum Gravitational Research Project show? Oh,
I have not.
Quantum Gravitational Research Project Heart Show. No, I have not, or at least I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't. That one doesn't ring a bell for me.
I'm going to put it in Google now, though.
Sean Carroll. I'm a big fan of Sean Carroll, and he talks about this sort of stuff too. Ties into a lot of other things as well. So,
I have now Googled quantum gravitational research project, and I will. What I do is I take notes during the show by opening a bunch of tabs,
Sounds pretty
and then I spend I spend the next day going through the tabs to learn the things that I didn't know beforehand. So I will do my best to get on that. Thanks so much, Cyberhex.
Anytime I hear quantum and consciousness in the same sentence, my hackles go up.
Deepak Chopra.
That's right.
$20 from Stein Jarl. Enjoyed the show. Thanks. You're very welcome, Stein. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. I enjoyed it too, being my first time here doing a show with Matt. Matt and I have been on things together before, but I think this is the first time we both co-hosted a show. So yeah, it's been a great time, and we're glad you enjoyed it.
Let's not make it the last time. Let's
sure.
do some more stuff.
I agree.
You can come to Star of India on December 11th if you're willing to take a plane for just a dinner.
Yes, you can come down and have dinner with us in a week or two if you want to fly all the way to Austin.
Yeah.
I might. I could.
Yeah. I guess I could say for people who are potentially looking at it, let me look up the name. I'm not accepting requests to join yet, but I should soon. If you're in the local Austin area and you go to meetup.com, I think we called it Austin Atheists, Skeptics, Humanists, and Skeptics, something like that. I'll look it up and I'll give it to you after when I actually have the right thing. I was ill prepared.
Now, if I don't live there, can I still join something like that?
There's not really much of a reason to. We might run like a local Discord or stuff, but we'll be looking for this to be both a community thing, but also something that we can use to basically have a community of people ready to start working with some charity projects that I've already connected to in town.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's the idea anyway.
Awesome. $20 from Jake Nelson. Thank you very much, Jake. I see that Jake has in his avatar picture down there. Not only is he playing guitar, but it looks like he's teaching the next generation. So,
bravo, good on you, Jake.
That's good because I can't really play it.
By the way, Matt?
I have a couple. I think David Gilmour would be way up there. Mark Knopfler and David Gilmour are probably my two favorite guitar players. Jerry Douglas is definitely my favorite dobro player.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think
for me it's oh yeah, see, and then the name goes out of my head, but Hendrix is up there, and Knopfler for sure.
Mark Knopfler, Dave Gilmour, Stevie Ray Vaughan's great. Lindsey Buckingham, I think, is vastly underrated. I just love listening to him.
Agreed, 100% agree with that. And what's her name just passed away too? As McVie, Christy McVie.
Christy McVie died today. Yeah. Not a guitar player, or at least not one I would recognize.
There was one before this, Jimmy. And I actually know how to pronounce the words that he put there in English. Yes,
there we go.
$10 from Jake Nelson. First time I'm hearing of you, Neil, but shalom and mashlomcha, which means like how you doing. It's Israeli slang. I can speak a little bit of Hebrew, so I lived there for a couple of years. I better be able. Thanks for the $10, Jake, and nice to meet you.
I stopped in Haifa while I was in the Navy. I think that was my only actual stop in Israel. Yeah, Cookies. Christine McVie died today. They announced it. Yeah. She died in a hospital. They didn't give any more details, but yeah.
She had a short illness, and I think it finally just overcame her. My only little story from Haifa is I had a friend whose uncle owned a little, I guess you could call like a little shop that sold spices and stuff. And his two grandpas would sit outside and argue with each other all day and pull little tiny little super hot peppers and eat them like they were fucking candy. You'd just be eating them and I'd be like, oh my God. You guys are trying to kill yourselves?
I don't know how many more we've got, but I want to get on them here. $9.99 from Bryn Poo KC. Matt, will we get a book report on Evil Eye next week, please? So it's funny because Bryn Poo may actually know more about how my brain works than they're letting on, because there is a non-zero. I just finished all the videos for November, and for December, not only do I have a debate or two upcoming and debate reviews, but it's entirely possible that I could sit down and get really hung up on this evil eye thing and wind up doing a Patreon video talking about something related to. I mean, that is a significant likelihood.
Cool.
We'll see.
That'd be kind of cool. I'd watch that.
For people who are asking about it right now, it's looking like we are going to cancel, but maybe just delay tomorrow's episode of Transatlantic. One of the hosts is sick, but we may do a makeup one over the weekend. We'll figure that out tomorrow if that's what's going to happen.
I'm assuming they all heard you.
Yes, I don't bother muting myself out anymore.
That's good.
$125, is that Mexican dollars, I guess?
Yep.
Yeah.
Not
Pesos.
sure. 125 pesos. Yeah. Thank you from Russell. Matt, have you ever noticed how Jimmy sounds like Russell Glasser? Takes me back to the good old days.
I've never noticed
myself,
that. And I think I probably have spent enough time listening to each of them that I will never notice that.
Yeah, I don't hear it either.
On Monday's show, somebody said that I sound like Trump, and they're like, "Man, it always catches me off guard how much Jimmy sounds like Trump." And I don't know if y'all can hear that I'm a little depressed right now. That's the whole reason why.
Well, I don't hear the Trump in you unless you're doing a Trump impression.
For people who are locals to Austin area, I mean, at least within 100 miles, I've put the link to the meetup in the live chat.
Good stuff.
Group. Yep.
Nice.
Last one.
Last super chat. I will read this. $10 from RB. Still an angry atheist after 40 plus years. Will it ever go away? So glad for these shows. Thanks, Pete and Jimmy, too. You know, here's the thing, RB. You've been an atheist longer than I have, so I don't know why you're asking me if it'll go away. But we hear a lot about anger and angry this and angry that and angry atheist this. If you're not angry at some of the things that are going on, either you're not paying attention or you just don't care enough. There are good things to be angry about, and I believe that there is a principle that I value, which is righteous anger, righteous indignation. What we don't want and we don't need is rage, where you lose control and can't harness those feelings. And so I genuinely hope that every atheist and every secularist, every humanist, every freethinker is just informed enough to be angry and just calm enough to channel that anger into useful, productive ways.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't always get it right. I wouldn't even remotely pretend that I've always gotten it right. It's not even close, but I'm always trying to get it right.
Yeah. It's all we can do, man. Is just try our best to make it a little bit better.
On that note, thanks to everybody who contributed super chats, but also thanks to everybody who just contributed chats. We greatly appreciate it. You guys are my Wednesday therapy. Love you guys. I can't wait till I get the snake stuff up and running so I can fill you in on all the cool stuff, because we're getting more, including I just got 2 African house snakes the other day. But I want to especially thank our moderators in chat, our call screeners, Jimmy for producing, and Neil the 604 Atheist. Please go give his channel a like, a subscribe, listen to some of those conversations. Yep. Those things are important. Margaret Downey told me once that one thing that the atheist community was missing amongst all the conventions, and let me give a lecture, was real people telling their stories to other real people. That's how you know you're not alone. That's how you find out who your people are. That's how you find out everything about each other. And it's how you know that you don't have to be alone. All those times we hear from people, oh, I didn't know there were other atheists out there. It's up to each and every one of us and each and every one of you in chat to be just as out as you can comfortably be, so that one day nobody will ever be able to say, I didn't know. I thought I was the only one. Then the world will be so much better. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Neil. Appreciate everybody.
Thank
We
you
will
for having
see
me.
you next week.
Bye, guys.